So I feel I'm a little late with this one, to be honest. I'm talking about the movie Final Girls. This is a 2015 meta horror comedy. Now, in case you're unaware of what Final Girls means, it basically refers to the end of kind of typical, especially kind of 80s and 90s horror. There was always kind of one girl left kind of fighting the bad guy. And this girl was always kind of like the virgin. Now, if you've seen like Cabin in the Woods, this was kind of explored in that movie, and this is a kind of a similar sort of thing. It's very much in the kind of the vein of almost a cross between like Scream, sort of Cabin in the Woods, and a little bit of kind of Last Action Hero kind of thrown in as well. And basically, the story is this kind of group of friends are led by this one particular girl who is mourning the death of her mother, who used to be a kind of a bit of a scream queen, and they're going to go and see one of her films, and they actually end up going in the film, in the actual movie itself, and end up kind of act against the characters that were portrayed by her mother in this movie and kind of variety of others. So they're actually in the kind of the world of this kind of horror film, and then they have to try and kind of obviously defend their lives after this kind of masked killer in the kind of the vein of Friday the 13th and kind of Sleepaway Camp and stuff like that. So it's very much a kind of a love letter to the kind of the horror films of the 80s, basically, kind of injecting what would happen if you had today's kind of youth injected into the kind of the horror situations that we had seen in these kind of like the earlier kind of slasher films and stuff like that. So it's kind of a fun movie with a kind of fun and somewhat original concept. And how about the execution? How was that one? Well, I have to say, I thought this was a fun film. I thought all the characters, there were obviously some stereotypes, but that was kind of by design. So I quite like seeing, how you kind of like have these kind of the 80s stereotypes kind of go up against the kind of the more modern sort of stereotypes, and how they will kind of interact, which was quite a lot of fun, I have to say. I also quite like it does actually have a bit of emotional heft here. The main character, who is Max, who is this kind of this young girl who's kind of lost her mother, who was once this actress, actually kind of meets her again, but it's actually not her mother, it's the kind of the character that her mother played, so to speak. But nevertheless, their scenes are kind of very kind of emotional, I have to say. One of the more amusing things I found, this has got a lot of TV stars in it. So you've got Alexander Ludwig, for example, who you may know from the TV show Vikings. He plays Ragnar Lothbrok's son, and he was actually in another movie in 2015 called Final Girl. No plural on that one. So he's been in both Final Girl and Final Girls, two completely separate movies in 2015. You've also got Nina Dobrev, of course, from the Vampire Diaries. So there are some kind of faces you're going to recognise here as well. So overall, this was a fun film. It was, it's quite fast paced. It was kind of only kind of 90 minutes or so. They sort of packed a lot in. They have quite a lot of kind of imaginative things when, you have the credits going up and the kind of the flashbacks. All of it was done very much tongue-in-cheek. Do I have a few kind of negatives? A few, not many, but let me just kind of rattle them off. So there are a couple of instances, especially early on in the movie, with some very shoddy CGI. This is kind of before they get into the kind of horror films themselves. There's a car crash and a kind of like a scene in the kind of the cinema, which I thought the CGI wasn't particularly good. And also, for a film that's parodying 80s slasher films, there's very little gore in this film, and if you're familiar with those, there's always like nudity and stuff like that. That's not in this film at all. So it's obviously been kind of made to kind of get a kind of lower rating, but it's parodying films that were originally obviously R rating in America or 18 here in the UK. So I would have liked to have seen some symmetry. And I have to say, in regards to what happened in the story, in the script, I personally, I don't want to rewrite a script. There was a couple of things where I felt it could have been a little tweaked here and there. There's a kind of a positive twist, all I can say, in regards to who survives it towards the end of the film. I didn't like, because it kind of undercuts what happened in the film somewhat. So I didn't like the kind of the twist at what happened, because I felt it kind of cheapened the actual movie a little bit. And there's a few things where, as the movie sort of is going through, they're kind of trying to stick to the rules of these kind of the horror films, but it's already kind of changed. They've already changed the plot because people die in this film that wouldn't have died in the original plot, things like that. So I thought, well, why can't they can change that, why can't they change this, things like that. So, but they're more nitpicks rather than kind of genuine criticisms, I have to say. Maybe the ending I kind of was legitimate criticism, I've got to say. But nevertheless, this is a fun, enjoyable film, likeable characters. You know, it's certainly a throwback to the kind of the films of yesteryear. I think it's, you know, they have definitely captured some of the kind of the cheesiness and campiness and the kind of the fun that you used to have in these kind of the 80s slash effects. But overall, I really enjoyed it. It's definitely one of these kind of like certainly more unique films, but nonetheless it doesn't kind of alienate you, but it's so different you can't kind of make head and tail of it. So I'm going to give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.